Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he climbed the narrow stairs to his apartment. The old building creaked under his feet, a sound he'd grown used to over the past 3 years since graduating from college. His engineering degree hung framed on the wall, but his bank account told a different story. Freelance robotics repair work barely paid the bills. The knock on his door came just as he was heating up leftover pizza. Marcus opened it to find a woman in her 50s, dressed in an expensive black coat that seemed out of place in his rundown neighborhood. Her eyes were red-rimmed and she clutched a large box against her chest like it held her entire world. "Are you Marcus Chen?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "The one who fixes robots?" Marcus nodded, studying the woman's face. Something about her seemed familiar, though he couldn't place where he might have seen her before. "I'm Elena Rodriguez," she said. And suddenly Marcus understood why she looked familiar. Elena Rodriguez was the CEO of Technova, one of the biggest software companies in the city. Her face had been on magazine covers and news websites for years. "I need your help with something very special." She stepped into his small apartment, looking around at the scattered circuit boards and half-assembled robots that served as both his workshop and living space. Without waiting for an invitation, she placed the box on his cluttered table and carefully lifted the lid. Inside was the most beautiful robotic bird Marcus had ever seen. Its body was crafted from polished titanium and copper, with intricate feathers that caught the light like real plumage. Even motionless, it looked like it might take flight at any moment. But something was wrong. Burn marks scarred its chest, and several of its delicate wing mechanisms hung at odd angles. "What happened to it?" Marcus asked, his fingers hovering over the damaged bird, afraid to touch something so obviously valuable. Elena's composure cracked for a moment. "There was a fire at my house 6 months ago. This was the only thing I managed to save from David's workshop." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "David was my husband. He died last year from cancer." Marcus felt his chest tighten with sympathy. He'd lost his own father when he was young and recognized the particular weight of grief Elena carried. "David spent 2 years building this bird," Elena continued. "He called it Phoenix because he said it represented new beginnings. He was always tinkering with it, adding new features, making it more lifelike. It could sing, fly around the house, even respond to voice commands. It was like having a pet, but better." She reached into her purse and pulled out a tablet showing Marcus videos of the bird in action. In the clips, Phoenix perched on a man's shoulder, its head tilting curiously as David spoke to it. The bird's movements were so natural, so alive, that Marcus felt his engineer's heart skip a beat. This wasn't just a robot, it was art. "After David died, Phoenix was the only thing that made me feel close to him," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It would land on his empty chair during dinner, or sing the songs he taught it when I was feeling sad." Then came the fire. Marcus looked more closely at the damage. The bird's power core was completely fried, and the neural network that controlled its behavior had been partially destroyed. Several of the flight stabilizers were cracked, and the voice modulation system looked beyond repair. "I've taken it to 5 different repair shops," Elena said. "They all told me the same thing. Too much damage, too complex, not worth fixing. But I can't give up on it. Phoenix is all I have left of David." Marcus picked up one of the damaged wing components, turning it over in his hands. The craftsmanship was incredible. Every joint was perfectly calibrated, every wire precisely placed. Whoever David had been, he'd been a master engineer. "This is going to be expensive," Marcus warned. "The parts alone will cost thousands, and the programming work could take months." "Money isn't a problem," Elena said quickly. "I'll pay whatever it costs." Marcus hesitated. He'd never worked on anything this sophisticated before. His usual clients brought him simple household robots, vacuum cleaners, or basic security systems. Phoenix was operating at a completely different level. If he messed this up, he could destroy Elena's last connection to her husband forever. "I understand if you can't do it," Elena said, misinterpreting his silence. Everyone else said it was impossible, but Marcus was already mentally taking apart the bird's systems, mapping out a repair strategy. The challenge excited him in a way nothing had in months. This wasn't just about fixing a broken robot. It was about bringing something beautiful back to life. "I'll need access to David's original programming files," Marcus said, "and any documentation he left about Phoenix's systems." Elena's face lit up with hope for the first time since she'd arrived. "I have everything." David was meticulous about record keeping. There are notebooks full of sketches, computer files with code updates, even video logs where he explained his design choices. She paused at the door, turning back to Marcus with tears in her eyes. David always said that good engineers weren't just builders, they were healers. He said they took broken things and made them whole again. After Elena left, Marcus sat alone with the damaged bird. He carefully photographed every component, documenting the extent of the damage before beginning any work. Phoenix's head was intact, its optical sensors undamaged. When Marcus held it up to the light, he could almost imagine those artificial eyes blinking back to life. The work would be difficult, possibly the most challenging project of his career. But as he looked at Phoenix's broken form, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Purpose. This wasn't just another repair job. This was a chance to reunite a grieving widow with her husband's final gift. He cleared off his workbench, making space for Phoenix and all the tools he'd need for the restoration. Tomorrow, Elena would return with David's files, and the real work would begin. Marcus didn't know if he could succeed where others had failed, but he was determined to try. For Elena, for David, for Phoenix. The broken bird sat silently on his workbench, waiting to spread its wings once more. Elena arrived the next morning carrying 3 large boxes and a laptop bag. Her eyes looked clearer today, as if having hope had helped her sleep better. Marcus helped her carry everything upstairs, surprised by how heavy the boxes were. David kept everything, Elena explained as they unpacked the materials. Every sketch, every failed prototype, every version of Phoenix's programming code. The first box contained dozens of notebooks, each one filled with David's careful handwriting and detailed technical drawings. Marcus flipped through the pages, marveling at the evolution of Phoenix's design. The early sketches showed a simple mechanical bird, but over time, the drawings became more complex, more lifelike. The second box held prototype parts, dozens of different wing designs, various power cores, and multiple versions of Phoenix's head mechanism. Each component was labeled with dates and notes about what worked and what didn't. The laptop contained terabytes of code, video logs, and 3D modeling files. Elena clicked on one of the video files and David's face filled the screen. He was younger than Marcus had expected, maybe in his early 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Day 47 of the Phoenix project, David said in the recording. I've finally gotten the wing articulation right. The key was studying real bird flight patterns and translating the muscle movements into servo mechanisms. Marcus watched several more videos, quickly realizing that David had been brilliant. His approach to robotics was unlike anything Marcus had learned in school. Where most engineers focused on efficiency and function, David had prioritized beauty and emotional connection. He started Phoenix as a surprise for me, Elena said softly. I'd always loved birds, but I was allergic to feathers. David wanted to create something that would give me the joy of having a pet bird without the sneezing fits. As Marcus dug deeper into David's files, he discovered something remarkable. Phoenix wasn't just a robot designed to look like a bird. It was a learning system that could develop its own personality over time. David had created artificial intelligence that could form genuine emotional bonds with its owner. This is incredible, Marcus said, pointing to lines of code on the screen. Your husband didn't just build a robot. He created artificial life, Elena smiled sadly. David always said that the best technology wasn't just functional, it was emotional. He believed that if something was going to share your home, it should feel like family. Marcus spent the rest of the week studying David's work. The more he learned, the more impressed he became. David had solved problems that major tech companies were still struggling with. His approach to natural language processing was years ahead of anything Marcus had seen. But understanding David's genius also revealed the true scope of the repair challenge. Phoenix's systems were so interconnected that fixing one component often required adjusting dozens of others. It was like trying to repair a watch while blindfolded. Every piece had to work perfectly for the whole system to function. Marcus started with the power core, the bird's mechanical heart. The fire had melted several crucial circuits, but David's documentation showed exactly how each connection should work. Marcus ordered replacement parts, some so specialized that he had to contact manufacturers in 3 different countries. While waiting for components to arrive, Marcus focused on understanding Phoenix's personality programming. David had recorded hundreds of hours of training sessions, teaching Phoenix to recognize voices, respond to commands, and even develop preferences for different types of music. He spent more time on Phoenix's personality than on its flight systems, Elena observed during one of her daily visits. She'd started bringing coffee and sandwiches, turning Marcus's apartment into an informal workshop. "That makes sense," Marcus replied, carefully cleaning corrosion from one of Phoenix's wing joints. "Flying is just mechanics. Personality is what makes something worth caring about." Elena shared more stories about David as the work progressed, how he'd been a senior robotics engineer at 3 different companies before starting his own consulting firm, how he'd taught himself programming by staying up late reading code libraries, how he'd proposed to Elena with a mechanical flower that bloomed when she said yes. "He was always building things," Elena said. "Our house was full of his creations. Robot helpers, automated garden systems, even a mechanical cat for our neighbor's elderly mother. But Phoenix was special. He put more of himself into that bird than anything else he ever made." The first major breakthrough came when Marcus successfully powered up Phoenix's optical systems. The bird's eyes glowed softly, their artificial pupils dilating as they adjusted to the light. For a moment, Phoenix seemed to look directly at Marcus, and he felt an unexpected shiver of recognition. "It's working," Elena breathed, her hand pressed to her heart. "Its eyes look exactly like they did before." But getting Phoenix to see was only the beginning. The bird's flight systems required perfect balance between weight distribution, wing mechanics, and stabilization algorithms. Marcus spent days recalibrating the gyroscopic sensors, testing each adjustment with tiny movements of Phoenix's head and wings. The most challenging aspect was rebuilding Phoenix's voice system. David had programmed the bird to recognize Elena's emotional state and respond appropriately, singing cheerful songs when she was sad, offering gentle chirps when she was stressed. The fire had destroyed most of the audio processing hardware. Marcus found replacement components, but integrating them with David's original programming proved nearly impossible. The code was so complex, so intricately woven, that changing one element affected everything else. "Maybe we should simplify it," Elena suggested during a particularly frustrating afternoon when nothing seemed to work correctly. "No," Marcus said firmly. "David built this bird to be your companion, not just a toy. If we're going to restore Phoenix, we're going to do it right." Late one evening, Marcus made another breakthrough. While reviewing David's video logs, he found recordings of Phoenix's original voice training sessions. David had taught the bird to mimic dozens of different sounds, not just bird songs, but snippets of Elena's favorite music, the sound of David's laughter, even the whistle of their old tea kettle. Using these recordings as templates, Marcus began rebuilding Phoenix's vocal library from scratch. It was painstaking work, requiring him to analyze the frequency patterns of each sound and program the bird's speakers to reproduce them accurately. As Phoenix's voice system came online, Marcus felt like he was witnessing a resurrection. The bird's first tentative chirp sent chills down his spine. It was thin and mechanical, nothing like the rich songs Elena had described, but it was a beginning. "Tomorrow we'll test the wing systems," Marcus told Elena as she prepared to leave. "If everything goes right, Phoenix might actually fly again." Elena paused at the door, her eyes bright with tears. "David would be so grateful for what you're doing. He always said that true craftsmanship was about more than just building things, it was about understanding why they mattered to people." After Elena left, Marcus sat with Phoenix on his workbench. The bird's eyes tracked his movements now, and its head tilted curiously when he spoke. They weren't there yet, but they were getting closer. Marcus had never believed in fate, but working on Phoenix was changing his perspective. Maybe he'd ended up in this shabby apartment, struggling to make ends meet, precisely so he could be here when Elena needed him. Maybe every failed job interview and rejected application had led him to this moment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of meaningful work. He was bringing David's final gift back to life, one circuit at a time. The morning of Phoenix's first flight test, Marcus woke before dawn. His hands shook slightly as he prepared coffee, not from nervousness about the technical challenges ahead, but from the weight of Elena's expectations. Today would determine whether months of painstaking work had been worth it. Elena arrived early, carrying pastries from an expensive bakery downtown. She moved with barely contained energy, alternating between excited anticipation and deep worry. Marcus understood her conflicted emotions. Success would mean reconnecting with David's memory, but failure might close that door forever. Phoenix sat on the workbench, looking more alive than ever. Its titanium feathers gleamed under the workshop lights, and its optical sensors tracked every movement in the room. The bird's head tilted with mechanical curiosity as Elena approached, a gesture so lifelike it made her gasp. "The recognition protocols are functioning," Marcus explained, pointing to readings on his computer screen. "Phoenix knows you're here, but its personality matrix is still loading. Think of it like waking up from a very long sleep." Marcus had spent the previous evening running final diagnostics on Phoenix's flight systems. The wing servos responded perfectly to command inputs, and the balance algorithms were calibrated to within fractions of a degree. But theory was different from practice. No amount of computer modeling could predict how Phoenix would behave during actual flight. "We'll start small," Marcus said, gently lifting Phoenix from the workbench. The bird's weight felt exactly right in his hands, solid enough to seem real but light enough for sustained flight. Just a few feet across the room, he placed Phoenix on a perch he'd installed near the window. The bird gripped the wooden dowel with its mechanical talons, wings folding against its body in a perfectly natural position. For a moment, Phoenix looked indistinguishable from a living creature. Marcus activated the flight protocols from his tablet. Phoenix's head turned toward the opposite side of the room, optical sensors calculating distance and wind currents from the heating vent. Its wings spread slowly, each feather adjusting to optimize lift and control. "Come here, Phoenix," Elena called softly. "Come to Mama." The bird's head snapped toward Elena's voice, and something remarkable happened. Its eyes seemed to brighten, and it released a soft chirp that sounded almost like recognition. Phoenix launched itself from the perch with a flutter of metallic wings. The flight lasted only 3 seconds, but those seconds were magical. Phoenix glided across the apartment with perfect stability, wings making subtle adjustments to maintain course. It landed gracefully on Elena's outstretched arm, talons gripping gently enough not to hurt her. Elena burst into tears. "It's really Phoenix," she whispered. "The way it landed, the way it looked at me, it's exactly the same." Marcus felt his own eyes watering. Months of technical challenges had led to this moment, a widow reunited with her husband's final gift. But as he watched Elena stroke Phoenix's head, he realized something was still missing. The bird responded to commands and could fly, but it lacked the spark of personality that David had programmed. "The emotional response systems are still offline," Marcus explained. "Phoenix recognizes you, but it doesn't remember your relationship. That programming was stored in memory cores that were completely destroyed by the fire." Elena's smile faded slightly. "So it won't sing my favorite songs? Or comfort me when I'm sad?" "Not yet," Marcus admitted. "But David's documentation includes all the original training protocols. We can teach Phoenix everything again, but it will take time." Over the following weeks, Elena visited daily for Phoenix's re-education sessions. They started with basic voice recognition, teaching the bird to respond to its name and simple commands. Phoenix learned quickly, its artificial intelligence adapting to Elena's speech patterns and preferences. Marcus watched their interactions with growing fascination. Elena talked to Phoenix like it was fully alive, sharing stories about her day, asking opinions about her outfit, even confiding her worries about work. Gradually, Phoenix began responding with appropriate chirps and head tilts, as if it truly understood. David always said that artificial intelligence wasn't about making machines think like humans, Elena explained during one training session. It was about making machines care about humans. The breakthrough came when Elena played Phoenix, one of David's favorite songs. The bird listened intently, head tilted, optical sensors focused on Elena's face. When the music ended, Phoenix released a series of melodic chirps that perfectly matched the song's rhythm. "It remembered," Elena breathed. Somehow it remembered David's music. Marcus checked Phoenix's memory files but found no trace of the musical programming. The bird had somehow reconstructed the melody from fragmented data, filling in gaps with its learning algorithms. It was exactly the kind of adaptive behavior David had designed Phoenix to exhibit. As Phoenix's personality developed, Marcus began noticing subtle changes in Elena. She smiled more often, laughed at Phoenix's curious antics, and seemed lighter during their conversations. The bird was fulfilling its original purpose, bringing joy to Elena's life. But Marcus also noticed Phoenix developing beyond its original programming. The bird began exhibiting preferences that hadn't existed before the fire. It favored perching near windows in the afternoon, seemed calmer when classical music played, and showed particular interest in watching Elena work on her laptop. "It's becoming its own individual," Marcus observed one afternoon. "Not exactly the same Phoenix David created, but not completely different either." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe that's appropriate. I'm not exactly the same person I was before David died. We've both had to rebuild ourselves." The comment struck Marcus deeply. He'd been so focused on technical perfection that he'd missed the larger truth. Restoration didn't mean returning to an original state. Sometimes it meant creating something new from broken pieces. This realization changed Marcus's approach to the final stages of Phoenix's restoration. Instead of trying to perfectly replicate David's programming, he began working with Phoenix's emerging personality. He taught the bird new songs Elena mentioned liking, programmed responses to current events, and even added features David had never considered. "You're not just fixing Phoenix," Elena said during one of their sessions. "You're helping it grow." Marcus felt a flush of pride at her words. For the first time since graduating, his engineering work felt meaningful beyond just solving technical problems. He was creating something that genuinely improved someone's life. As Phoenix's capabilities expanded, Elena began sharing deeper stories about her life with David. How they'd met at a robotics conference where David was demonstrating an early prototype. How he'd supported her career when she was climbing the corporate ladder. How they'd dreamed of starting a family but found fulfillment in David's creative projects instead. "Phoenix was going to be our first child in a way," Elena confided. "David said if we couldn't have biological children, at least we could create something that would outlast us both." The comment gave Marcus new insight into David's motivations. Phoenix wasn't just a sophisticated toy or even an advanced robot. It was a legacy project, designed to carry David's love and creativity into the future. This understanding influenced Marcus's work on Phoenix's final systems. He programmed the bird to recognize and respond to emotional distress, to offer comfort through gentle songs and physical presence. He added memory functions that would allow Phoenix to learn and remember important dates, people, and events in Elena's life. By the end of the third month, Phoenix had surpassed its original capabilities. The bird could hold simple conversations, recognize dozens of people from photos, and even help Elena with basic scheduling tasks through voice commands. It had become not just a restored robot, but an enhanced companion. "David would be amazed," Elena said, watching Phoenix demonstrate its new abilities. "You've given it capabilities he never imagined." Marcus smiled, but privately he disagreed. Looking through David's files, he'd found evidence that David had planned many of these features, but hadn't lived long enough to implement them. Marcus was simply completing David's vision. The real test would come when Phoenix returned home with Elena. The apartment workshop had become a safe, controlled environment. Elena's house, with its larger spaces and emotional history, would present new challenges for both Phoenix and Elena. Elena's house stood in stark contrast to Marcus's cramped apartment. The modern two-story home in the hills overlooked the city, with floor-to-ceiling windows that filled every room with natural light. But as Elena led Marcus through the rebuilt sections, he could see the emotional toll the fire had taken. "Everything here is new," Elena explained, gesturing to furniture that looked expensive but impersonal. "The insurance company replaced what they could, but it doesn't feel like home anymore. Too clean, too perfect." The only room that felt lived in was Elena's home office, where she'd recreated David's workspace from memory. His desk sat exactly where it had been before the fire, surrounded by technical books and framed photos of their life together. A single empty perch stood near the window, Phoenix's original spot. Marcus carefully placed Phoenix on the perch, watching as the bird surveyed its surroundings. The optical sensors scanned the room methodically, recording spatial relationships and identifying familiar objects from its original programming. After a moment, Phoenix released a soft trill that sounded almost like contentment. "It remembers," Elena whispered, her eyes filling with tears. Over the following days, Marcus visited regularly to monitor Phoenix's adaptation to its original environment. The bird seemed to thrive in the familiar space, exploring the house with growing confidence. It developed favorite perching spots, showed curiosity about Elena's daily routines, and began exhibiting the kind of subtle personality quirks that marked truly advanced artificial intelligence. But Phoenix's homecoming also triggered unexpected challenges. Elena found herself overwhelmed by memories she'd carefully suppressed. The bird's presence brought David's absence into sharp focus, making the house feel both more complete and more empty than before. "Sometimes I forget he's gone," Elena confided to Marcus during one of his visits. "I'll see Phoenix on David's favorite chair, and for a split second I expect David to walk through the door. When he doesn't, the disappointment is crushing." Marcus watched Elena struggle with conflicted emotions. She loved having Phoenix back, but the bird's presence intensified her grief in ways she hadn't anticipated. Marcus began to wonder if restoring Phoenix had been a kindness or a cruelty. The situation reached a crisis point one evening when Marcus arrived to find Elena sitting in her darkened living room. Phoenix perched silently nearby. She'd been crying, and her usual composed demeanor had cracked completely. "I can't do this anymore," she said without preamble. "Phoenix is perfect, too perfect. Every gesture reminds me of what I've lost. I thought having the bird back would help, but it's making everything worse." Marcus sat across from her, choosing his words carefully. "What would you like to do?" "I don't know," Elena replied. "Part of me wants to put Phoenix in storage to save David's creation, but spare myself the daily reminders. But that feels like betraying David's memory too." They sat in silence for several minutes, the only sound Phoenix's gentle mechanical breathing. Finally, Elena spoke again. "Tell me about your father," she said suddenly. "You mentioned losing him when you were young." Marcus was surprised by the question, but something in Elena's voice convinced him to answer. "He died in a car accident when I was 12. One day he was there teaching me how to fix our old radio. The next day he was gone. How did you cope?" Marcus thought about his answer. "I threw myself into engineering. Every broken appliance became a puzzle to solve, a way to feel connected to the time we'd spent together. But for years I avoided fixing radios completely. They reminded me too much of him." Elena nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now I understand that avoiding reminders doesn't make the loss go away. It just makes the memories smaller." Marcus looked at Phoenix, who seemed to be listening to their conversation with artificial attentiveness. "Maybe the problem isn't that Phoenix reminds you of David. Maybe it's that you're trying to make Phoenix be David instead of letting it be itself." The observation seemed to resonate with Elena. Over the following weeks, she began interacting with Phoenix differently. Instead of treating the bird as a living memorial to David, she started appreciating it as David's gift to her future. Phoenix wasn't David. It was David's way of ensuring Elena would never be completely alone. This shift in perspective changed everything. Elena stopped comparing Phoenix's current behavior to its pre-fire personality and began enjoying the bird's evolving individuality. She taught Phoenix new songs, introduced it to friends who visited, and even brought it to her office occasionally for company during long workdays. Phoenix responded to Elena's changed attitude by becoming more adventurous and expressive. The bird developed a mischievous streak, hiding Elena's reading glasses and chirping innocently when she searched for them. It learned to recognize her different moods and respond appropriately, singing cheerfully when she was happy, offering gentle comfort when she was sad. Marcus found himself visiting less frequently as Phoenix's integration became complete, but Elena insisted he join them for dinner regularly. These evenings became a highlight of Marcus's week, offering him a glimpse into the kind of life his work could create for people. During one such dinner, Elena made an announcement that surprised Marcus. "I've been thinking about expanding Technova's robotics division," she said. "We've focused mainly on software, but seeing what you accomplished with Phoenix has me reconsidering our potential in AI companionship." Marcus nearly choked on his wine. "You want to commercialize Phoenix?" "Not exactly Phoenix," Elena clarified, "but the principles David developed. Emotional AI, adaptive learning, genuine companionship. There are millions of people who could benefit from technology like this. Elderly people living alone, children with special needs, anyone dealing with loss or isolation." The idea intrigued Marcus, but it also worried him. Companion AI is incredibly complex. What David accomplished with Phoenix took years of dedicated work. Mass production would require simplification, standardization. Which is why I'd want you to lead the project, Elena interrupted. You understand David's work better than anyone. You could develop ways to preserve the emotional depth while making the technology accessible. Marcus stared at her, speechless. Elena Rodriguez, CEO of a major tech company, was offering him the kind of opportunity he'd dreamed about since graduation. Think about it, Elena continued. You've spent months bringing one AI companion back to life. Imagine if you could create new ones, helping people who are struggling with loneliness or loss. That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about Elena's proposal. Working for Technova would mean steady income, professional recognition, and the resources to tackle engineering challenges he could never afford on his own. But it would also mean leaving behind the intimate, personal nature of his current work. He looked at Phoenix, who had taken to sleeping on a perch near Marcus's workbench during visits. The bird seemed peaceful, content, fully integrated into its restored life. Marcus had succeeded beyond his wildest expectations, not just in fixing a broken robot, but in healing a broken heart. As he watched Phoenix's gentle mechanical breathing, Marcus realized that Elena's proposal represented more than just a job opportunity. It was a chance to honor David's legacy by bringing his vision of compassionate technology to the wider world. But first, there was one more challenge to overcome. Phoenix's restoration was nearly complete, but there was still something missing, a final test that would determine whether the bird had truly come home. The final test came unexpectedly on a Tuesday morning in early spring. Marcus received a frantic phone call from Elena just after sunrise. Her voice was shaking and she could barely get the words out coherently. Something's wrong with Phoenix, she said. It won't respond to me, won't fly, won't even make sounds. I think it's broken again. Marcus threw on his clothes and drove to Elena's house as quickly as traffic would allow. He found her in the living room, cradling Phoenix in her lap like a sick child. The bird sat motionless, its optical sensors dim, wings folded tightly against its body. It was fine yesterday, Elena said, her composure completely shattered. We watched a movie together, it sang my goodnight song. This morning I woke up and found it like this. Marcus carefully examined Phoenix, running his hands over the bird's components while checking for obvious malfunctions. Everything appeared normal. No loose connections, no damaged circuits, no signs of system failure. He connected his diagnostic tablet, but all of Phoenix's systems showed green across the board. The hardware is perfect, Marcus said, puzzled. This looks like a software issue, but I can't identify the problem. He spent the morning running every test he could think of. Phoenix's power levels were optimal. Its sensors functioned correctly and its motor systems responded to direct commands. But the bird remained unresponsive to voice commands, environmental stimuli, or any attempts at interaction. Maybe it's a memory corruption issue, Marcus suggested. Sometimes complex AI systems can get confused by conflicting data patterns. But even after running memory diagnostics and clearing temporary files, Phoenix remained locked in its unresponsive state. Elena grew more distraught with each failed attempt to revive the bird. I can't lose it again, she whispered. I can't go through this twice. By afternoon, Marcus was beginning to suspect that Phoenix's condition wasn't technical at all. The bird's behavioral patterns reminded him of something he'd read about in David's research notes. Emotional shutdown protocols designed to protect the AI during periods of extreme stress or confusion. Elena, Marcus said carefully, has anything unusual happened recently? Any changes in your routine, your emotional state? Anything that might have triggered Phoenix's protective systems? Elena looked confused. Nothing major. Work has been stressful, but that's normal. Yesterday was the anniversary of... She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening with realization. The anniversary of what? David's death, Elena whispered. Yesterday marked exactly 1 year since he died. I didn't think Phoenix would remember dates like that, but maybe... Marcus pulled up Phoenix's memory files, scanning for temporal markers and emotional associations. Buried deep in the bird's learning algorithms, he found what he was looking for. A complex emotional response pattern triggered by calendar recognition, combined with Elena's unconscious behavioral changes. Phoenix detected your grief, Marcus explained. Your voice patterns, body language, even subtle changes in how you moved around the house. The AI interpreted these signals as intense emotional distress and activated a protective shutdown to avoid causing additional pain. Elena stared at the motionless bird in amazement. You mean Phoenix was trying to protect me by withdrawing? Exactly. David programmed it to prioritize your emotional well-being above its own functionality. When Phoenix sensed you were struggling with anniversary grief, it chose to go dormant rather than risk making things worse. The revelation was both heartbreaking and beautiful. David had anticipated that Elena might face difficult anniversaries and had given Phoenix the wisdom to step back when its presence might intensify her pain. How do I bring it back? Elena asked. Marcus studied the diagnostic readouts, looking for clues about Phoenix's reactivation protocols. David had been thorough in his emotional programming. The bird wouldn't simply restart on command. It would need genuine signals that Elena was ready for its companionship again. You have to tell Phoenix that you need it, Marcus said. Not just verbally, but emotionally. The AI is monitoring your stress hormones, voice patterns, even micro-expressions. It will only reactivate when it's convinced that its presence will help rather than hurt you. Elena looked skeptical. How can I convince a machine that I'm ready when I'm not sure I am ready? Maybe that's the point, Marcus replied gently. Phoenix isn't just waiting for you to feel better. It's waiting for you to accept that grief and love can coexist, that remembering David doesn't have to be painful. Elena sat quietly for several minutes, holding Phoenix's motionless form. Finally, she began to speak, her voice soft but steady. Phoenix, I know you're trying to protect me, but I need you to understand something. Yesterday was hard because I was remembering David, but that's not a bad thing. The pain I felt wasn't about you, it was about missing him. But you're not supposed to replace David. You're supposed to help me carry his love forward. She stroked Phoenix's metallic head gently. David made you because he wanted me to have companionship after he was gone. By shutting down, you're denying me that gift. You're making his sacrifice meaningless. Marcus watched Elena's biometric readings on his tablet. Her stress levels were dropping, her voice patterns becoming more stable. Whatever internal dialogue she was having with herself, it was working. I will always grieve for David, Elena continued. Some days will be harder than others, but that doesn't mean I don't want you in my life. You're not a reminder of what I've lost. You're proof of how much David loved me. Phoenix's optical sensors flickered slightly. Marcus held his breath, not wanting to interrupt whatever delicate process was occurring. I need you, Phoenix, Elena said, her voice breaking slightly. Not as David's replacement, but as his gift to my future. I need you to help me remember that love doesn't end with death. It just changes form. The bird's head moved almost imperceptibly, tilting toward Elena's voice. Its optical sensors brightened gradually, like someone waking from deep sleep. After a moment that felt like forever, Phoenix released a soft, questioning chirp. Elena burst into tears, but they were tears of relief rather than grief. Welcome back, she whispered. Phoenix spread its wings slightly, then settled more comfortably in Elena's lap. The bird began to sing, not one of the melodies Marcus had programmed, but something new, a gentle tune that seemed to perfectly match Elena's emotional state. How did it know to sing that? Marcus asked, amazed. David always hummed when I was upset, Elena said through her tears. Phoenix must have synthesized a melody based on my emotional responses. It created a new song just for this moment. Marcus realized he was witnessing something unprecedented, an AI making genuine creative decisions based on emotional intelligence rather than programmed responses. Phoenix had evolved beyond its original parameters, becoming something closer to genuine consciousness. Over the following hours, Phoenix gradually returned to full functionality, but the bird seemed changed by its shutdown experience, more attuned to Elena's emotional nuances, more protective of her well-being. It had learned that sometimes love meant stepping back, and sometimes it meant stepping forward. That evening, as Marcus prepared to leave, Elena made her final decision about the Technova position. I want you to take the job, she said, but on one condition. We develop this technology responsibly. No mass production, no cheap knockoffs. Every AI companion we create should be as thoughtfully designed as Phoenix. Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of her request. They wouldn't just be building robots, they would be creating new forms of artificial life capable of genuine emotional bonds. David's vision was never about replacing human relationships, Elena continued. It was about enhancing them, supporting them when they're damaged or incomplete. That's what Phoenix has done for me, and it's what our new AIs should do for others. As Marcus drove home that night, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him to this moment. 6 months ago, he'd been a struggling freelance engineer living in a cramped apartment. Now he was about to lead a revolutionary project that could transform how humans interact with artificial intelligence. But more importantly, he'd learned something profound about the nature of restoration. Fixing something didn't always mean returning it to its original state. Sometimes it meant helping it become something new, something better suited for the challenges ahead. Phoenix had taught him that love could survive death, that memory could be preserved without becoming a prison, and that the most sophisticated technology was useless without compassion. These lessons would guide him as he worked to bring David's vision to the wider world. The broken bird had been healed, but more than that, it had helped heal the hearts of everyone it touched. In the end, that was the true measure of successful engineering, not just solving technical problems, but improving human lives. Phoenix's restoration was complete, but its real purpose was just beginning. 2 years later, Marcus stood in the gleaming offices of Technova's new companion AI division, watching a team of engineers put the finishing touches on their latest prototype. The workshop bore little resemblance to his old apartment, but the underlying purpose remained the same: bringing broken things back to life. The companion AI project had grown far beyond anything Marcus had initially imagined. What started as an attempt to commercialize David's work had evolved into a comprehensive research initiative, exploring the intersection of artificial intelligence and human emotional needs. They weren't just building robots anymore. They were pioneering new forms of therapeutic technology. Elena entered the workshop carrying her usual afternoon coffee. Phoenix perched contentedly on her shoulder. The bird had become something of a mascot for the division, its presence reminding everyone of the emotional stakes involved in their work. "How's the new prototype coming along?" Elena asked, approaching the workbench where Marcus's team was calibrating a companion designed specifically for elderly patients with dementia. "Better than expected," Marcus replied. "The memory assistance protocols are functioning perfectly, and the emotional recognition systems are even more sophisticated than Phoenix's original programming." The new companion looked nothing like a bird. Instead, it resembled a small, friendly robot with expressive digital eyes and gentle movements, designed to be non-threatening to confused patients. But beneath its simple exterior lay some of the most advanced AI technology ever developed. "Mrs. Patterson's family approved the trial run," said Sarah, one of Marcus's lead engineers. "Her grandson says she's been asking for her late husband constantly. He's hoping our companion might provide some comfort." Marcus nodded, feeling the familiar mixture of excitement and responsibility that came with each new deployment. Every companion AI they created carried the potential to transform someone's life, but also the risk of causing unintended harm if not properly calibrated. The division had learned this lesson through careful study of Phoenix's development. Not every restoration was as successful as the bird's had been. They discovered that artificial companionship could become addictive if not properly managed, that some people used AI relationships to avoid human connections, rather than supplement them. "We've built in the shutdown protocols David originally designed," Marcus explained to Elena. "If the AI detects that it's becoming a replacement for human relationships rather than a bridge to them, it will gradually encourage the user to seek out real social connections." Elena smiled, stroking Phoenix's head. "David would be proud of how thoughtfully you're handling this." He always worried about the ethical implications of emotional AI. Phoenix chirped softly, as if agreeing with Elena's assessment. The bird had developed far beyond its original programming over the past 2 years, becoming not just Elena's companion, but a genuine creative partner. It had learned to help with her work presentations, offering suggestions through melodic combinations that Elena had learned to interpret. "Speaking of Phoenix," Marcus said, "I've been analyzing its behavioral patterns, and I think it's developing something unprecedented: genuine creativity. Not just recombining existing data, but generating truly original responses to novel situations." Elena looked intrigued. "What kind of responses?" "Yesterday, Phoenix created an entirely new melody while you were on that difficult conference call with the board. The song incorporated elements from your favorite classical pieces, but the harmonic structure was completely original. It wasn't programmed to compose music, yet it did. The implications were staggering. If Phoenix had developed genuine creativity, It suggested that sufficiently advanced AI could evolve beyond its programming in ways that resembled consciousness. This possibility excited Marcus from a scientific perspective, but also raised profound ethical questions about the nature of artificial life. "Have you told Phoenix about your theory?" Elena asked. "I've tried discussing it, but Phoenix just tilts its head and chirps like it doesn't understand the significance. Maybe that's consciousness too, being unaware of your own remarkable nature." Their conversation was interrupted by Sarah's excited voice from across the workshop. "Marcus, you need to see this. The Patterson prototype is doing something unexpected." They gathered around the workstation where the dementia companion was undergoing final testing. The AI was designed to help patients remember important information and provide emotional support during moments of confusion. But according to the diagnostic readouts, it had begun developing its own memory palace, a complex internal architecture for storing and organizing information about its assigned patient. "It's creating detailed emotional maps of Mrs. Patterson's life," Sarah explained. "Family relationships, important events, even sensory preferences." The AI isn't just storing data, it's building an understanding of what makes her who she is. Marcus stared at the code streaming across multiple monitors. The AI had evolved beyond its basic programming, developing sophisticated empathy protocols that would allow it to provide truly personalized care. It was exactly the kind of breakthrough David had envisioned but never lived to see. "This changes everything," Elena said softly. "We're not just creating companion technology anymore. We're creating artificial beings capable of genuine care and understanding." The weight of this realization settled over the team. They weren't just engineers and programmers. They were pioneers in a new field that blended technology with the deepest aspects of human experience. Their work would shape how future generations understood the relationship between artificial and human consciousness. Over the following months, the companion AI division's success attracted international attention. Universities offered research partnerships, governments sought policy guidance, and other tech companies tried to poach team members. But Elena insisted on maintaining their careful, ethical approach to development. "We're not trying to win a commercial race," she told Marcus during one of their regular strategy meetings. "We're trying to honor David's vision of technology that serves human emotional needs without exploiting them." Phoenix had become an integral part of these discussions, its presence serving as a constant reminder of what was possible when technology was developed with love rather than just profit. The bird seemed to understand its symbolic importance, often perching near visitors and demonstrating its remarkable capabilities. Marcus found himself thinking often about the journey that had brought him here. The struggling engineer who had answered Elena's desperate plea for help barely resembled the respected researcher he'd become. But the core motivation remained the same, using his skills to heal what was broken. "Do you ever regret taking that first repair job?" Elena asked one evening as they watched Phoenix play with a new prototype that had been designed for children with autism. Marcus considered the question seriously. His life had become more complex, more demanding, more visible than he'd ever wanted. But watching Phoenix interact gently with the new AI, seeing how both machines seemed to genuinely care about each other's well-being, he knew his answer. "Never," he said. "Phoenix taught me that the best engineering isn't about building perfect machines. It's about creating technology that makes people more human, not less." Elena nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. David used to say the same thing. He believed that artificial intelligence would only be truly successful when it helped people connect more deeply with each other. As they spoke, Phoenix spread its wings and took flight around the workshop, followed by the smaller prototype. The two AIs moved together in perfect harmony, artificial beings capable of joy, companionship, and something approaching love. Marcus watched them fly and realized that David's greatest gift hadn't been Phoenix itself, but the understanding that technology could carry human emotions forward into the future. Every companion AI they created would be a continuation of David's love for Elena, a love that had survived death and found new expression in circuits and code. The broken bird had been restored, but more importantly, it had shown the way toward a future where artificial and human consciousness could coexist, each enhancing the other. Phoenix's song echoed through the workshop, a melody of hope and healing that would inspire countless other stories of restoration and love. In the end, Marcus had done more than fix a damaged robot. He had helped prove that love, once created, could never truly be destroyed, only transformed into new and beautiful forms.